So yeah, good evening everybody. Stephen Sawyers, just to give you my full title, I'm Head of Catering and Facilities Management for Glasgow City Council. I've been with the council about 10, 11 years, but I came into post in terms of looking after catering FM in March 2020. Some would say that was not quite the right time to join any new job, but certainly since then I've really got my feet under the table. We've obviously had the COVID situation in terms of how we respond to that as a service, in particular with the schools, but also other settings as well, care homes, workplaces, etc. So really what we feel we needed to do was pull together a service development plan. So the slides that you're going to see tonight is really the culmination of where I feel we are as a service from March 2020. Now, what I would say is that much of the content that you're going to see tonight is really based on the information and feedback that we've had from two previous sessions that Leanne has chaired over the last couple of months now, I think. And certainly from just to give you a bit of background, the sessions that certainly from my perspective were excellent. They were really, really useful to me, because I do feel that in terms of building the service development plan for Catering FM, it's got to have that input from some key stakeholders, and none more so than the people that are on this call tonight. So start off by saying thank you for all your input, because it's helped shape the plan. And what I'll do is there's about 7 or 8 slides, so it's not a huge presentation, but I will probably dwell on a number of the points that I make in there. And as I say, we're here to get your feedback again, and hope this is the start of ongoing engagement as we move forward. So I'll get on to the first slide, Leanne. Okay, so yeah, as I said, the engagement session started in the summer of 2021, and that was a variety of stakeholder groups. I won't go through every single group that we started the engagement with, but probably a reminder, because I called out the 4 key groups in earlier calls, and certainly the parent councils would be very much at the forefront of that. And as I've said just at the start there, the sessions that we had in September were really helpful to us as a business, not just me. There was other people out from my team that were on the call as well, and we all agreed that the feedback that we got, and I was talking about the constructive stuff, the stuff that was constructive in terms of its criticism, in terms of some of the things that weren't so good out there, was really, really helpful to us in order to really learn from that and build this plan. Running alongside that, I met with the head teachers. We were in with face-to-face meetings in the city chambers. So all the primary school head teachers, we've had that engagement with as well. And again, we were looking to follow that up with more engagement going forward. But again, a key part of this is to say, right, okay, let's go and meet with people. We haven't got around to doing the pupil forums yet. That will come though, and we are very much keen to try and do that by the end of the year. Originally, the plan was to try and do them in October, November, but fundamentally it was a bit ambitious in the first place to try and get that in. But what I didn't want to do was to hold back from going ahead with the plan and getting it out there. So what we get from the pupil forums will just be incorporated in once we get that. And if that changes the plan in any way, then we'll certainly be able to share that. And also the staff was another key stakeholder group, because obviously they're, I want their involvement, I want their engagement, I need their buy-in. We need to work with the staff better than we have done going forward, because that's just what we need to do. We absolutely have to make sure that our key asset in delivering the plan are engaged in this. So again, those will be arranged. And probably just as a kind of signpost here for the project, we do have a project that we're looking at, what the plan is to roll out universal free school meals. We've got a target of primary 5 by January in 2022, and then obviously P6 and P7 for the remainder, for the new term in August 2022. So that is still there in the background. I'm not necessarily here because of that project, but certainly it's obviously a key milestone for the business to try and get this rolled out, and it gives us an opportunity to build the changes that we want to make to try and look at how we can develop the service whilst we're going through a major change in terms of the volume of meals that will go out on free school meals for primary. That's not to say that I'm dismissing secondary at all. So secondary is very much part of the plan as well, albeit maybe a slightly different approach or a slightly different model in terms of what we're looking at for the older children. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is the approach. And what I wanted to do was provide the group tonight with some key commitments. What I would say is that I'm very much the person that really wants to be involved, that wants to have a profile amongst all the stakeholder groups. I want to be fairly hands-on. I want to be accessible, all that type of stuff. And I kind of hope that the approach that we give you tonight evidences that in some way. So we're going to be open, we're going to be transparent, we're going to be inclusive, and that's to everybody. In my inbox over the last wee while, there's been various groups, various individuals making contact with me. I welcome that contact. And as I say, we want to make sure that if there's a group out there or an individual out there, we want to make sure that their voice is heard. I've got an internal working group because clearly I can't do this on my own, so I've got a really strong team behind me. We've got a working group that will help shape how we do this going forward. We will make sure that as we progress over the months and years ahead, that we will report updates going forward, and you'll see a bit of that in the first couple of slides. So, and not to say that probably what was referenced, I think, to be fair to the first two sessions that we had back in September, I think everybody recognises the challenges that we've got with the service delivery, and also the challenges we've got with the different views that are going to be, even on this call, there'll be however many people are here, they'll represent some different views that will be in conflict a little bit with each other in terms of what we think we want and we need. So again, it's just recognising that simply we're not going to be pleasing all of the people all the time, but certainly what we want to do, as I said earlier, is make sure that everybody is involved in this process. And really what I've said to my team is we're going to create and we're going to deliver the plan. And this will not just be words tonight. We're not here just to do a fancy presentation with a PowerPoint slide. It's really just to make sure that you can see that there's a bit of substance behind the plan and that we're going to deliver that. And really this approach is hopefully finished up with providing these key commitments from tonight onwards. So we've done a bit, not all of the engagement, but certainly from a parent perspective, we've completed that at the outset. And that's helped give me an idea of what these commitments should be. So I'll go into the next slide, Leanne. Okay, so the key work streams, as I say, we looked at the feedback that we got from the sessions and we thought there were key work streams that we just wanted to focus on. Some of the feedback that we got from the earlier sessions was communication. I think I asked them questions about, or certainly got some feedback about what was the communication like with the service, and pretty much non-existent was probably the answer that I got, or if it was there was nothing followed up. So what we found was there was a lack of messaging there. The information that was out there could be easily misunderstood or misinterpreted. Example being, is fruit included in free school meals? Is it unlimited? Is you only allowed one piece? All that type of stuff came out in the communication. And really what was left there, because of that vacuum that we'd left, because of that gap in the communication channel, therefore you were relying on your children coming home with either no or anecdotal feedback. And I've got 2 young children, and certainly when I ask my son or my daughter what happened at school today, I usually get a one-word answer. So you're not really going to get either much feedback or they may not tell you the truth or whatever. So again, it's not the right channel to really understand what's happening with the service. So from a commitment point of view, we will look at what that communication channel is going to be. We're thinking of building up a parent newsletter. We'll look at what the content may be. Of course, we can shape that going forward based on, again, more feedback, and more or less try and get to an agreed frequency of where we think how often that newsletter can go out. There will be other channels for communication, but certainly from the feedback, we felt that it was very infrequent, quite sporadic, and a lot of misinformation out there. So the first commitment is really to make sure that you've got a reasonably regular communication coming out from the service. So we will shape that going forward. The next work stream, onto the next slide, Leanne, thank you, is really the engagement piece. Again, what I'm keen to do is make sure that, you know, we're engaged with you. There was no evidence of that. There was a lack of confidence from some of the parents on the calls about, you know, were they being heard? Was anybody doing anything about it? And certainly looking back, as I've said a couple of times now, the sessions that we had, we found that they were extremely useful. And there was no key contact or face to the business. It was just the school, or, you know, the catering team, or, you know, the people that work in the fuel zone. So I think it's important that we change that. And that goes back to my earlier comment about, you know, having that profile and having that contact with myself. So the sessions were good, as I say. You know, it's helped us build the commitments that we want to share with you tonight. I think what we want to do is certainly do more of the Zoom calls. Obviously, we live in a world now where we're doing far more of that type of thing than face-to-face, so we can actually, you know, look at that going forward. But certainly from my perspective, we would be looking to engage with parent groups at least twice per term. So for example, we did a session in September, October. I would then be looking to do one sort of March, April, and we would just go around that, that cycle in terms of committing to at least 2 sessions per term. Outside of that, as I say, you know, where possible, because obviously, you know, Glasgow's a big city, there's a lot of groups, there's a lot of individuals, but where possible, we can, you know, if people are willing to come into the chambers or agree to meet somewhere, then we could look at any specific meetings outside of the kind of group forum, and we can try, as I say, fit that in, you know, diaries permitting. So again, that would be with SMT, probably me, but we're keen to try and make sure there's kind of 3, 4 or 5 people in my team who report directly to me, who would be involved in, you know, getting more engagement in there. So really just to summarise that, let's do these type of sessions twice per term. Let's overlay it with, you know, more profile to the business, and so that we've got a kind of visibility from a leadership point of view that you know who is responsible for delivering the service. So that completes the engagement piece. Moving on, Leanne. So I would say this was the most enlightening part of these sessions that we had, and I kind of grouped consistency and quality of service together. What was very clear, and, you know, was a bit of an eye-opener, was the lack of consistency across the schools. We did get evidence of some, you know, local practices, good and bad, and obviously we've got 141 primary schools. You know, we've got ASL schools and secondary schools taking us up to, you know, 180, 185 marks. So very much about, we need to do a lot of work on the consistency across the schools. My view would be that it shouldn't really matter what school you're going to, the experience you get in the fuel zone should be the same, and certainly how we deliver the menu should be exactly the same. And also another part of that, from a quality perspective, was that we didn't have enough food in some schools. There was an element of once it got to the end of the lunchtime period and the P6s and P7s were coming in, there wasn't enough food to go around, which again was really, really important feedback. And there was temperature issues, people talking about, you know, food wasn't warm enough, that type of thing. And as I say, we've covered that a bit about the lack of information and what's included, because at that point we were talking about, you know, what's included and what's not included. So we need to take all that feedback back to staff. Certainly from my perspective, I very much focus quite a lot on the people element of the role that I've got. And we do want to put forward some more investment into staff. In some ways, there's an opportunity going forward if we can complement that staff. And I've talked at previous sessions about how the model should be looked at a little bit differently. So we've got staff on both sides of the counter, you know, catering assistants, catering managers, but possibly how can we get people out in the fuel zone engaging and interacting with the children. But fundamentally, I think there's an opportunity here to have a look at how do we bring people on? How do we actually induct people into the business? How do we do the kind of, you know, the training? How do we actually develop our staff so that they're getting best practice, so that they're actually getting better at their job. And what we tend to do in Catering FM is look at volume. We look at how many meals were taken by children, how many were free, how many were paid for. We look at, year groups, how many P5s, all that type. It tends to be very much number based. What we don't tend to do, certainly at the moment, is we don't ask about the quality of the service. And in my view, that is more important than the number of meals that we produce. So we certainly want to build what I would call our key performance indicators and get some more qualitative measures actually onto that. And a lot of that will be about the engagement that I've just talked about. A lot of that will be about, okay, how could we introduce measures at a local level so that we understand how performance is at each individual school. So those two commitments were very, very key to me. I don't want to make work streams more important than the other, but certainly those two commitments that you see on your screen now were absolutely as a direct result of the sessions and the feedback that you gave me. That's not to say that there wasn't other feedback that was useful, but certainly from what we got from it, we felt that the consistency and quality is something that we can work on going forward. Moving forward then, I suppose just to see where we are on service development. What I've talked about up till now is very much about, the here and now. What are we doing right now? What can we fix right now? What do we want to do differently? And all of that is very much looking at the short term. But the good thing here is we also want to build for the future. We also want to see what changes are we actually going to make, and what are we aiming for, and what are we going to do for the future. I've put those questions on the bullet points there. I asked myself those questions. I've got the answers. Are we reaching out enough? No. We're not reaching out enough at all, notwithstanding what we're doing tonight, but we need to do more of that. But we also do need to more of it in terms of looking out the way at other industries and how do they produce food, how do they serve it. Also looking at our partnerships with other organisations, other local authorities, and also looking at who our Assist FM colleagues, which is an excellent networking group. We could be more involved in that. And certainly I'm going to an AGM for Assist FM, and I've been nominated to go in that committee. And if I'm lucky enough to be accepted into that group, that would be another way of trying to, make sure that we reach out much better than we have in the past. Can we change the delivery model? Yes, is the answer to that. But again, we want to do it probably by evolution rather than revolution. So we want to make sort of incremental changes as to how we do that. I think everybody is keen to look at, can we do things differently? Obviously, there are parameters. There's budget pressures, there's time pressures in terms of FuelZone, and there's other things that we need to look at. But fundamentally, we think we can change the delivery model, albeit we need to do it in partnership and in conjunction and in consultation with the stakeholders group. And also suppliers. We actually don't speak to suppliers enough. We want to make sure that from our procurement point of view and working with our procurement colleagues, that we're actually making sure that when we go out to tender, we're asking the right questions. We're actually making the, making sure the tender is robust and that we're getting what we want. There's many challenges when you're looking at Glasgow as an authority in terms of delivering what we deliver. But one of the things that we've got is we've got scale in terms of the size, and what should come with that is an ability to really make sure that the suppliers are very, very interested in Glasgow. And what we need to make sure is that that relationship works for us just as much as it works for them in terms of the scale of the business. So certainly going forward, the sixth commitment is we will evidence partnership working and collaboration. We've started that with the Soil Association, which has resulted in us receiving the Bronze Award for the Food for Life served here. I am in active dialogue with the Soil Association already about the next stages of that and other opportunities. In fact, I'm doing an event with the Soil Association at COP26, where we're going to be hosting a kind of fringe event at that. So there will be a lot more of that going forward. And certainly from that point of view, it's trying to make sure that, go back to that point about, everybody's voice will be heard. If you've seen my inbox, you would see loads of people saying we want more meat in the menu, and you've got loads of emails saying we want more plant-based menus, etc., etc. So it's about making sure that we absolutely gather all of that feedback and try and find a way where we gain a balance there. But fundamentally, our job is to provide a quality service. It's to make sure, I think, in terms of the added value, that we educate our children in terms of good food choices. And I think we play a bigger role than just feeding the children at the Fuel Zone. We can do a lot more than that, which is going to stand them in good stead as they go into to adulthood. So just to summarise, I think I'm coming to the last slide. We'll focus on the key work streams. That's not to say there's not more than 4, but I think we'll work on some, and once we feel we've got those work streams into a bit of a rhythm and we've got them moving, then we will add to that. Just as a way of summarising: communication, engagement, consistency and quality of service, and obviously that last slide there where I talked about the service development. The commitments are there for you. I wanted to make sure that this update wasn't just a little bit sort of, high level. It wasn't strategic. For me, it needed to be based on key objectives that we can actually say, did we do that or did we not? So I wanted to make sure there's an element of accountability there in terms of what we do. So I won't read through all the commitments again, because they've obviously been there in the slides, but basically that is the draft plan that we've got for ourselves as a service. Going alongside the engagement plan, we would be looking for this to be the main agenda for our sessions going into 2022, where we would say, right, how's the communication going? Have we got the newsletter out? Are we doing the engagement? Are we doing some one-to-ones? How's the staff training going? How's your quality measures, Stephen? And what's happening with your partnership working? These will all be key agenda items going forward, alongside an invitation to add any agenda items from a parent perspective that they would want to focus on. So in closing, I hope that the slides were helpful to you. So the first question is there enough room in canteens for all pupils in schools to have school lunches for both primary and secondary? Will staggered lunchtimes be considered? This works well in other countries. That's a really great question, because I spent about 3 hours this afternoon with various groups working on the rollout of universal free school meals. What I can tell you is that we will be looking at accommodation and infrastructure. What comes with the rollout of universal free school meals is some funding from Scottish Government. Now, that's not been allocated yet, and the actual value of the funding has not been agreed yet. However, we are doing site visits to all of the schools to understand what changes we need to make for certain schools that need that, so that we do have the capacity. The other thing that goes along with that is that we get data to tell us a 10-year projection of the area in terms of new build houses and what the population of the particular neighbourhood is going to be like, and that tells us what we need to plan for over that period of time. So in some schools it's tight, in some schools there's plenty of space, so we just do look at it on purely a school by school case. And what we would be looking to do is that I'm not sure about the staggered lunchtimes. What you will find in Glasgow all of the time, that there won't be the same thing for every single school, because everybody's circumstances and everybody's environment is slightly different, and we need to actually make changes to accommodate that. But fundamentally, the answer is we need to make enough room, and we want to use the funding that we get to actually see some changes to each of the properties where it's necessary, and we hope that the funding can help us cover that. The second question is, some schools separate those with packed lunches from those having school meals. This can lead to fear of being left out and lead to parents being asked to provide packed lunches. So yeah, I mean, I think that probably that question probably opens up a kind of wider issue for me in terms of, being left out, stigma, people being separated, all that type of thing. So that's very much, what we are looking at, because I think it's not just about feeding children, it's about the experience it's about the environment, and it's about making sure that we make the changes so that we don't have, you know, those situations happening. And, you know, at the end of the day, from a packed lunch perspective, clearly when you're in my job, you don't want anybody having any packed lunches. You want to make sure as best possible that we are providing a service where neither the parents or the children have got packed lunches on, and you know, to bring in. But certainly that'd be something that we want to look at going forward. Third question, can less plastic be used with a move to reusable cutlery and crockery? Again, excellent question. We absolutely want to look at that. I don't know, for those that may be aware, we've started a mid-morning snack, which is in place across all primary schools at the moment. And certainly in week 1, we recognised that we used too much plastic. And certainly for this week, we've made an absolute conscious effort to go to a different supplier where they're managing to give us the fruit without the packaging. Now, COP26 is around the corner. I personally don't think COP26 is just going to be a flavour of the month thing, and we'll all go back to different, you know, the old ways of doing things. I actually think that we're seriously going to be looking at our sustainability and absolutely looking at, and again, it goes back to the point I made in the slide about, are we speaking to our suppliers enough? You know, are we actually saying to them, we don't want any plastic? It's your problem. If you want to do business with Glasgow, here is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to go away and find your supply chain to help deliver it, that it means that it doesn't harm the environment as much as it has done, and that we've got a sustainability there. So absolutely, that is something that we want to endorse, and that'll be something that we'll be looking to try and measure in some way. Okay, let me just see what I've got here. Commitment 1, newsletters are a lot of work from a tier that may quickly be out of date. In a social media world, could you put out sample photos of the food HD week for parents to see portion size and quality, and enable us to ask if this looks like the same as what they get? A picture is worth 1,000 words. I can't give you a commitment that we can take pictures and then get them out in terms of what was delivered on that day. We are working with, there's a rollout just now of the online payments, and we are building in more pictures into the menu, because we think that that's going to be you know, more attractive, so that actually people can see what the meal looks like rather than just the text. So we are going down the route of providing more photographs, but again, you know, we'll have a look at the balance between social media and newsletters. So there may be a variety of channels that we can use. Next question says, how soon will you be able to have all kitchens fully operational? So again, each school is getting looked at on a case-by-case basis. In terms of the funding, we don't expect that to be agreed, you know, this year. It will be agreed hopefully January, but certainly from that point onwards, we would be looking to actually get the kitchens fully operational in terms of any adaptations that we're going to make. We are looking at infrastructure. We are looking at, you know, these trays that the kids are carrying about with. We're looking at all of that to understand what we think we should change. And we certainly think that as we progress into 2022, and this is why I think it's important that we get the engagement sessions in March, April, that we actually tell you what the progress is on that and where we are with the rollout programme. So it will be 2022 before you start to see, you know, infrastructure changes. Next question is, why do children who have special needs who only eat certain foods, are they not catered for? Well, certainly we want to cater for them. We do have quite a robust process if we're talking about allergens, or if we're talking about any type of special need on a diet, then there is a robust process. So again, that comes back to the communication, where we're obviously not telling people that there is a diet there that can be catered for. I've got quite a strong food safety team, and that food safety team actually centralise that process, where they actually look at all the diets that need to be catered for by way of special needs, and then that's signed off centrally before it goes to the catering manager within the school. So I'll take a note to make sure that we communicate that widely so that people can get an opportunity to use that process where it's needed. I am concerned that nutrition hasn't been mentioned within the commitments. Will the review look at the nutritional content of food and the design of the meals? I noticed that vegetables are rarely included in the recipe, but served as a separate item. I don't know many children who elect to take vegetables. So nutrition is, whilst it's not named in the plan, what I can tell you is that we are very, very heavily regulated. There is a lot of legislation out there on the nutritional value. Every single item that goes on the plate is nutritionally measured because we have to comply with the standards. So whilst it's not there, it's probably covered in terms of the quality element of what the offering is. But we are absolutely compliant with the most recent nutritional standards, and they were updated in April 2021, which then triggered us to have a new menu out on the 9th of menu because we had to update the menu to comply with the new legislation. So nutrition is very much front and centre of what we're thinking about. A, because we want to be compliant, clearly, but two, our view here is that we are not here to feed the children. We're here to provide a healthy, balanced diet that educates the children into adulthood. Clearly, vegetables and fruit are going to be a key component of that. And we're absolutely up for ideas about how we can gently introduce that into the diet going forward. Children who bring in packed lunch, can they have soup, fruit and yoghurt? Again, on the free school meal side, yes. Again, that's part of how can we change the model so that it's very clear about if you're bringing in a packed lunch, this is what you can have or not. So again, we'll probably cover that in the communication going forward. Some of the questions are quite long, so I won't read them word for word, but I'll kind of summarise if that's okay. Beyond the topic of meat or meatless options, could we include less processed food? There's a comment here that the portions are too small and that children are coming home starving, which is got to be cards on the table, completely unacceptable. We absolutely have to make sure that doesn't happen going forward. We don't like that he's getting pizza, hot dogs, except absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. In terms of the soup, somebody's mentioning soup on the question. That was, again, a key component of the feedback that we got, because not all schools are providing soup when it should be on the menu, particularly as we go into the winter period. So that is something that we can do. And again, that's where you can get your nutritional content into the soup as well. So the point there about not enough food and less processed food is absolutely something that we want to achieve. Next one, the standard of food isn't the same. Absolutely, it comes back to the point about staff training, consistency. The question goes on to talk about the school ration food due to the unavailability of certain items. So yeah, I mean that the supply chain is probably just seasonal at the moment because of all the issues that everybody's got on supply chain. But certainly we want to speak to suppliers going forward to make sure that we don't have any lack of availability. So again, it's about, yes, more options. We want to have more options, we want to have more quality, and we certainly want to make sure that the portion sizes are right and that absolutely, nobody is coming home still hungry from being in our fuel zone. We've got to get the balance right on that, because clearly, going back to the environment and sustainability, we need to make sure that our food waste is controlled, but not to the point that we don't have enough. So I think, is that the question? So yeah, I suppose, my kind of summary of, again, all the questions were good there. Thank you for them. Absolutely, again, we take all these things on board. I absolutely accept that the situation in terms of providing a development plan is quite narrow in terms of the focus, but that's deliberate because we don't want to have 20 things on the plan and we don't get anything done. But we certainly want to make sure there's some key commitments there that are certainly achievable. And as I say, my view would be to be on these types of calls to update everybody on progress or otherwise. I do feel that I'm confident that we've got some excellent people behind the scenes who do a great job. I'm really, really hopeful that you guys will feel that you're hopefully in time that we can deliver for you. As I say, I don't want to sit here on fancy presentations or Zoom calls. I want to be accountable. I want to be accessible, and certainly, we're up for the feedback, good and bad, going forward. The only thing I would say in closing would be, this is a long-term plan. You know, we're not, there's no thing about doing something now and then, you know, finishing it next March or April. The whole thing about improvement is to continually look at ways of doing things better. So we will still be here in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 4 years' time, trying to look at best practice and taking on board the feedback that you provide with a way to getting better all the time. Bear in mind though, we're a local authority. We don't have pots and pots of money, so there are constraints, there are parameters, and we just need to make sure that we get best value out of